අයිබෝන් සියලු දෙනාටම සුබ සන්ධ්‍යාවක්. We are trying to talk a top subject that has been in the media and also talked a lot about in Sri Lanka for the last 4 months or so, because the taxes were increased in Sri Lanka. That is in the middle of a very high inflation, which is about 70%, and people were struggling to live. So, this is an open forum today. We want you to try to answer the questions that we have. And what I will try to do is explain as much as possible to every slide that I've explored about, and then get your opinions and ideas and so on. So the eventual purpose is that we will contribute all the ideas and everything in a consensus manner to the blueprint that we are trying to develop as a model for Sri Lanka. So hopefully everyone's contributions will have some benefit for Sri Lanka's future. So we've been engaged in a lot of activities, but this one I have not been able to find an expert who can talk about this, but collected few things who will be able to contribute as we go. So that is what we are trying to do. So tax affairs and the people in Sri Lanka, how can this be fair, tolerable, justified, and also pro-development? This is also an important aspect. So taxes in Sri Lanka mainly includes excise duties, value-added tax, income tax, and tariffs. Tax revenue is a primary constituent of the government's fiscal policy. The government of Sri Lanka imposes tax mainly of two types in the forms of direct taxes and indirect taxes. So we want to talk about a little bit and get ideas from you in relation to like clarifications or help or guidance to develop this ideal blueprint that we would like to see imposed in Sri Lanka. But before that, I don't know whether other teams are there. I was going to take up a subject that is very important. I've asked two people to join. They're not here yet. So we will talk about this a little bit shortly. So in relation to this, what do you think? What is your idea about taxes? Let's see, before we discuss anything, your ideas in relation to tax changes in Sri Lanka, just what you thought about it, or did you know about it, or anything like that? So let's see what the audience want to say. Anything you think about? There's people who are living in Sri Lanka who talked about it and understand this as well. Say, I mean, some people are abroad, some people are. Yes, Nilmini, what do you want to say? Yeah.
I was quite shocked to learn that very few people are actually paying income tax in Sri Lanka.
Yeah.
And given the number of people who are economically active in the country, that a very small proportion of them appear to actually have tax files, which makes you wonder how on earth did the country run itself until now.
Yeah.
And also, but kind of concerned that a lot of taxation seems to be based on duties and VAT rather than income tax. Obviously, there's always a balance to be struck between discouraging people from generating wealth, because too heavily taxed economies also discourage people from investing, and enterprise is discouraged. But on the other hand, you need revenue for the government to maintain public services.
Yeah.
And indirect taxes are always punitive for people who don't actually have much of an income. So income tax is quite an important element of government revenue.
Yeah, and Ranjan, yes, Ranjan.
Thank you. The very basic need requirement for a successful tax policy is confidence, public confidence in the government. The people must feel, they must feel in their bones that the money they give is will be used by the government for the benefit of the people. I remember in the 70s, there was a financial meltdown in the Asian region, and the South Korean people, the women, voluntarily handed over their jewelry to help the government overcome the meltdown. See, voluntarily, no force. They handed over their bangles, their necklaces, earrings, voluntarily. That what does that show? What it showed to me was the confidence the people had in their government that the money they give, the wealth they give, will be returned to them, will be used properly. Unfortunately, in Sri Lanka, that is non-existent today. That confidence is totally gone. So I think you can't put up a building on a no foundation. We have to first build a proper foundation. Thereafter only you can put up the tax building. That is not gone. Almost the entire population of Sri Lanka has lost confidence in trusting our government, the present government, with any money. So I think we have to address this fundamental issue first. Thereafter, we can think of putting up this tax building comprising expenses. We can go into the details regarding expenses of government, waste of public money, tax inclusion, etc., etc. Because all this presumes taxes. But if taxes are not being paid, because the government, people don't trust the government, then what is the use of wasting our time on these issues? Thank you.
So, Ranjan, so we don't trust the government. Is that because the government is not transparent, or is that because they're spending money for things that are not important, or what do you think?
People are not trusting the government, Chula, because it is well established that the government has robbed the money, right? It has robbed the money. What is the public view? Government coffers are empty, but the custodians of those coffers are filthy rich. We can see it. Planes are coming to Sri Lanka, right? Private jets are coming to Sri Lanka for the head of state then to go to a Kovil in India. To go to a Kovil in, can you imagine that? You see, I can understand if he takes a commercial airline, books a seat and goes. But a private jet comes all the way from Uganda to take him. Just imagine how wealthy he must be. How wealthy he must be. If a plane comes from America to pick up Chula to come to Sri Lanka, a private plane, how wealthy must Chula be?
Oh, is
Think
it the
like
give and take kind of thing? Is it because is it probably give and take? Nobody does anything of that kind without any profit, isn't it?
yeah, so that's a obviously therefore that is the level of wealth. The custodian whom the people trusted to look after the people have become wealthy. the extent to which he has become wealthy when the country is bankrupt. He says, my country has no money. This reminds me of Mobutu in Zaire. Now it is called by some other name. You see, the joke at that time was the country was bankrupt. The joke at that time was that when his country, Mobutu's country, it was called Zaire then, now Congo. See, his country goes to the World Bank or IMF for a loan. The IMF approaches Mobutu for a loan to give Zaire. That was a joke at that time. IMF approaches Mobutu, the dictator of Congo, please give us some money, your country wants some money. So that is, Sri Lanka is at that level of corruption now. So we have to correct that first.
Dharmay, what do you think? Yeah, you have also raised the hand.
Yeah, very quick comment, Chula. There are two sides here. As Ranjan said, it's the confidence of people. People now know what is going on. It's a corruption plus waste plus rulers robbing the public funds. That is the main reason people are opposing. That is number one. Number two, as Nilmini mentioned, a lot of capable people in the country are not paying income tax. If any income is coming, it is through value-added tax. That is from the very poorest person. Very rich people are escaping paying income tax. So that is the second point. So I think we have to do these things. Let me ask, what is the income tax rate, VAT rate in Sri Lanka, Ranjan?
Again?
In UK, it is about 17%, isn't it, Chula?
Yeah, I got the some data about our income tax rates later on, but maybe Ranjan can answer.
I think in the UK is 20%.
UK is 20%. Yeah. What is the rate in
Sorry, I
Sri
beg your
Lanka?
pardon. Sorry, you asked about income tax. And there are several bands, I think, isn't there?
Yeah, there's several bands, but I've got
yeah.
some details about
I thought you
changes.
meant VAT, sorry.
I was asking VAT.
VAT is 20% in
20%.
the UK.
Yes.
I think it's about
In
the
Sri
same
Lanka?
in Sri Lanka. I think it's about the same in Sri Lanka, yeah.
Right, okay.
But on top of that, there's a turnover tax for the business people. I don't know how it works out. I think it's also some number. So they must be recovering that from the consumer as well. Any questions there? Anything else? Any comments?
Udita has
Yes, Udita.
raised
Udita.
his.
Yes, Udita. Udita, hello.
Yeah, I just want to make a comment on the previous discussion. Even recently, I know these have been circulating many times. Even recently, I saw a clip on WhatsApp on 10 richest in the country, and in that. I think Sirisena was around number 9 or 10, and there were so many businessmen. We can say that they have got money. Kumar Sangakkara was number 7. We know that, I mean, through cricket and various other things, he would have generated money. He must be having a lot of money. But number 1 was Mahinda Rajapaksa, of course, with some 9 billion or something like that. Now, as a country, of course, people can say these things may be wrong. These are just hearsay. But as a country, I think it is important for people to ask if these are correct, for the politicians to explain from where they have got this money. Of politicians, in theory, they should be having their normal income from through the parliament or whatever it is, being a minister or being the president or prime minister. But anything above that, it's the right of it's right for people to question and ask politicians to explain this amount of money which is said to be their wealth. So again, I don't know whether anyone would like to comment, but as a country, I think we need to ask these questions.
Yeah, that's correct. Thank you, Udita, for that. I think we're getting some light into the issues that surrounding this. Before I proceed, and thank you for all this. Before I proceed, I want to follow on an issue that we raised earlier on about school children, because we have some developments into that. So I'll talk to these are the issues. So we need to, we've talked about the issues that we have in the schools about 2-3 weeks ago, several times. And also, I also personally experienced the issues we had in one school in Magona when I went there a month ago. The problems the children had, which has not come into light in the general media and so on. So this depends on the class of the school. That is in Sri Lanka. So it is not evident in very high-powered school. It evident kind of in the middle-class schools. So the children, for example, drinking water and not having food. Children, for example, sharing food between themselves. Children are being fed by teachers by bringing in 2 lunches and so on. So situation, and there are deficiencies in books and everything else. So we thought how to progress, do that. So we thought there was a need maybe for a documentary to bring out these issues so that people who can help understand exactly what problems are there in the school. So in this context, I've invited, and they have also joined, Chanaka, who is one of the main principals in that area, who knows, and also Kaluthara principal, who may join later on. And also I have a journalist who's Saroj, she's on the system, who will also talk about this. So Ajanta, you are there. Ajanta, you want to talk a little bit about පොඩ්ඩක් මේ ගැන කියනවද මේ ඉස්කෝලේ තියෙන ළමයින්ට තියෙන ඉෂුව එක හැමතැනම දැන්ට තියෙනවා. ඒක නිසා පොඩ්ඩක් කියනවද ඒක ගැන?
ස්තුතියි මාවත් එකතු කරගත්තට මේ සාකච්ඡාවට. ඇත්තටම ඔබතුමා අර කිව්වා වගේ ඒ අත්දැකීම් යම් ප්‍රමාණයකට මේ ප්‍රදේශයට ඇවිල්ලා ලබා ගත්තා. මට කෙටියෙන් කියන්න තියෙන්නේ මම හිතන්නේ ඔබ සියලු දෙනා දැනුවත් මේ පොදු ප්‍රශ්නය පිළිබඳව. නමුත් ගැටලු කීපයක් තියෙනවා. ඒ ගැටලු කීපය මේ සාකච්ඡාවට මතු කරන්න මම කැමතියි. දැන් ලංකාවේ පාසල් ගත්තොත් 10000ක් විතර තියෙනවා. ඒ 10000න් අති බහුතරයක් තියෙන්නේ type 2 වර්ගයේ පාසල්. type 2 කියලා කියන O level දක්වා පාසල්. A levels වලත් science maths තියෙන 1AB වගේ පාසල් තියෙනවා. 1C පාසල් තියෙනවා. science commerce arts විතරක් තියෙන. ඒ වගේම type 3 primary විතරක් පාසල් තියෙනවා. ඒතර මේ ඒ නිසා මේ ස්වභාවය අනුවම පාසල් වෙන් වෙලා තියෙනවා. ඒකම ගත්තොත් මට මේක මම කියන්නේ මේ ආහාර ප්‍රශ්නෙට මුල් වෙන පසුබිම. දැන් උදාහරණයක් ගත්තොත් කළුතර දිස්ත්‍රික්කයේ කළුතර කලාපයේ කියන කොට්ටාශ ඉස්කෝල 150ක් තියෙනකොට ඒ 150න් 75ක පෝෂණ ව්‍යාපෘතිය කියලා එකක් රජයේ කොහොමත්. ඒ කියන්නේ මේ තියෙන සුවිශේෂී ප්‍රශ්නේ එන්න ඉස්සෙල්ලත් රජය පාසල් 75ක් විතර අඳුනගෙන පෝෂණ වැඩසටහනක් යනවා. ඒ කියන්නේ රුපියල් 30ක විතර මුදලක් දරුවෙක් වෙනුවෙන් කරලා ඒ කියන්නේ අර type 3 ඒ කියන්නේ primary පාසල් සහ ඒ අරුණම සමහර type 2 ඒ කියන්නේ O level දක්වා තියෙන පාසල් වල යම් ශිෂ්‍ය සංඛ්‍යාවක් ඒ කියන්නේ එක්ක primary නැත්නම් අංශ දෙකම යොමු කරගෙන. එතකොට ඔබට තේරෙනවා අපි විශේෂයෙන්ම කරුණු දැක්ුවේ නැති වුණත් ඒ කියන්නේ රජයේම පිළිගන්නවා දරුවන්ට කන්න නැහැ කියලා. ඒක අලුත් ඒ කියන්නේ අපි ඒක ප්‍රකාශ කළ යුතු නැහැ. ඒගොල්ලොම පිළිගන්නවා. ඒ නිසානේ කැම වේලක් දෙන්න වෙලා තියෙන්නේ. ඒ කියන්නේ එහෙම කාලා එන්නේ නැහැ ළමයි කියන එක ඔය තත්ත්වය කියන්නේ මේ වෙච්ච ආර්ථික අර්බුදයට ඉස්සෙල්ලා. නමුත් ඒ තත්ත්වය දැන් තීව්‍ර වෙලා තියෙන්නේ. හැබැයි ප්‍රශ්නේ තියෙන්නේ ඕනනම් කෙනෙකුට අර 1AB නගරයේ තියෙන ප්‍රධාන පාට ගිහිල්ලා පොඩි රිසර්ච් එකක් අපිට මේක දැනෙන්නේ විශේෂයෙන් ගනුදෙනු කරන පහළ පන්තිය දරුවෝ වෙන. විශේෂයෙන්ම ලංකාවේ පාසල් හැදිලා තියෙන්නෙම ස්වභාවයෙන්ම දැන් මේ වෙනකොට දැන් අපේ ගම පාසල් ඉතුරු වෙන්නේ ආසන්නයේ තියෙන ජාතික පාසලටත් ගිහිල්ලා නගරේ තියෙන ඒ පාසලටත් ගිහිල්ලා කොළඹටත් ගිහිල්ලා දැන් උදාහරණයකට කළුතර ගත්තොත් එහෙම කොළඹත් ගිහිල්ලා මොරටුවටත් ගිහිල්ලා ඊට පස්සේ කළුතර නගරයටත් ගිහිල්ලා තමයි ගමේ පුංචි එකේ කියන්නේ කිසිදු දෙයක් කරගන්න බැරි පිරිස් තමයි ඉතුරු වෙලා තියෙන්නේ. ඒ නිසා මේක හරියටම හඳුනා ගන්න ඕන අපි කියන්නේ අපිට හම්බෙලා ඉන්න පිරිස අතරේ ඒ ගැටලුව වැඩි. ඒ නිසා ඒ රජයේ දැනට කරගෙන යන ව්‍යාපෘති මුදල වැඩි කරා ඒක ටිකක් විධිමත්ව වෙන්නේ ඒ ප්‍රශ්නේ තියෙන්නේ. ඒ නිසා අපි සමහර අයව සම්බන්ධ කරගෙන මේ වගේ ක්‍රියාදාමයක් කරා ඔබතුමා දන්නවා. ඉතින් අපිට ප්‍රශ්නේ මුළුමනින් එතනින් විසඳන්න බෑ. නමුත් අපි හිතනවා පොත් නැතුව විශේෂයෙන් කැම නැතුව අපි දරුවන්ට ඉස්කෝලේ ගෙනියනවා. ඒක ඔබ දන්නවා සාමාන්‍ය සරල අත්දැකීම. උදේ රැස්වීමක් තිබ්බොත් පැය භාගයක් එක දිගට හිටගෙන හිටියොත් එහෙම ළමයි සැලකිය යුතු ප්‍රමාණයක් වැටෙනවා. එතන තියෙන පෝෂණ ප්‍රශ්නය වගේ මට හිතෙන්නේ ළමයි කාලා ඉන්නේ නැහැ කියන ප්‍රශ්නෙට වඩා ගුණාත්මක ආහාර වේලක් සමබර ආහාර වේලක් ගන්නවාද කියන ප්‍රශ්නේ තියෙනවා. ඇත්තටම ප්‍රශ්නේ මහා ගොඩාක් උඩුදුවල නැත්තේ ඒකත් කියන්න ඕන. අපිටම හැදිච්ච ආවේනික වෙච්ච ක්‍රමවේදක් තියෙනවා දරුවන්ට. ඒකත් කියන්න බෑ. උදාහරණයක් විදිහට දැන් මේ දවස්වල දෙල් සහ කොස් තියෙනවා. ඒ නිසා ඒවා දරුවන්ගේ පෙට්ටි වල වරදින්නේ නැහැ දැන් මේ මාස 3-4. ඉතින් ඒ නිසා ඒක ස්වභාවිකව ආරක්ෂා වෙලා තියෙනවා. ඒ ඇරෙන්න ඇත්තටම අපිට ඒක ඩේටා විදිහට කියන්න ඕනේ නැහැ. දක්වන්න අවශ්‍ය නැහැ කියලා මම හිතනවා. ඒ ප්‍රශ්නේ ඇත්තටම තියෙනවා. හැබැයි කනගාටුදායක තුමල්ලා විදේශවල සහ යම් තැන්වල ඉඳලා මේ පිළිබඳ දැනුවත් සාකච්ඡා කරනවා. අපේ ගුරුවරු සහ විදුහල්පතිවරු එකතු කරලවත් සාකච්ඡා කරන්න බෑ මේක. මොකද ඔවුන් ඒකට සංවේදී නෑ. ඔවුන් අති බහුතරයකට මම මේක කියනවා මට අති බහුතරයක් විදුහල්පතිවරු සහ මේ ශාස්ත්‍රයේ ඉන්න අය දරුවන්ගේ මේ කෑම නැතිකමට සහ දේවල් වලට සංවේදී නෑ. ඒක එක පැත්තකින් ඔවුන් සාධාරණයි. මොකද ඔවුන්ගේ වැටුප මේ බදු මුදල් වලින් අය කිරීම ඔවුන් ජීවන වියදම දරන්න බැරි වීම නිසා ඔවුන්ගේ ප්‍රශ්නවල ඔවුන් කරවටක් ගිලිලා ඉන්නේ. ඒ නිසා දරුවන්ගේ කෑම ප්‍රශ්නය ඒ අයට ඒ තරම් ප්‍රශ්නයක් වෙලා නැහැ. ඒ නිසා ඔවුන් ඒ පිළිබඳ ලොකු සාකච්ඡාවකට යන්නේ නැහැ. මම කියන්නේ සොරා මැතිනිය සම කරපු සාකච්ඡාව ඔබතුමා දකින්න නැති අපි දෙතුන් දෙනෙක් අදහස් දක්වන්නේ. ප්‍රශ්නේ තියෙනවා. එක්ක කියන්නේ එක්ක කියන්න බයයි. එක්ක හරියට ඒ පිළිබඳ රිසර්ච් එකක් කරලා නැහැ. ඒක තමයි මට කියන්න තියෙන්නේ ලංකාවේ තත්ත්වය. ස්තුතියි.
බොහොම ස්තුතියි මේ අජන්ත ඒක පොඩ්ඩක් සමරයිස් කරාට මම කළුතර ප්‍රින්සිපල්ට කතා කරා තාම ජොයින් වෙලා නැහැ. මේකේ ගැන අපිට ඩොකියුමන්ටරි එකක් හදන්න අවශ්‍යතාවය තියෙනවා. ඒකට අපි ඊටම මේ හැකියාවක් තියෙන පුද්ගලයෙක් ඒකට කැමති වෙලක් තියෙනවා. සරෝජ් ඔතන ඉන්නවා. සරෝජ්ට පුළුවන් නම් ඒ ගැන කියන්න පුළුවන්. සරෝජ් කියන්නේ ඉස්සර BBC එකේ හිටපු ජර්නලිස්ට් කෙනෙක් දැන් ලංකාවේ ඉන්නේ. ඒ ගැන කැමති වෙලා තියෙනවා. සරෝජ් ඉන්නවද ඔතන? සරෝජ් පොඩ්ඩක් කතා කරන්න.
ඔව් මට මම හිතන්නේ වීඩියෝ එක දාන්න බැරි වෙයි සමාවෙන්න මේ මම ඉන්න තැන නිසා. මම ඇත්තටම සොරායත් එක්කත් මේක දිගටම කතා කරමින් හිටියේ. මම ඔබතුමාලගේ ඔයගලගේ එක රැස්වීමකට මීට කලින් සහභාගී වුණා. ඉතින් ඇත්තටම අහගෙන හිටියේ හරිම වේදනාකාරී. මේ මට තියෙන ඇත්තටම ප්‍රශ්නය තමයි ප්‍රශ්නය කියන්නේ මෙහෙමයි මේ තරම් මේ වගේ බරපතල ගැටලුවක් තියෙද්දිත් ප්‍රධාන ධාරාවේ මාධ්‍යවල මේ වගේ කාරණා ගැන කිසිම අවධානයක් යොමු නොවෙන එක. එක පැත්තකින් දැන් අර කලින් විදුහල්පතිතුමා කිව්වා වගේ සමහරවිට මාධ්‍යවලටත් දැන් මේ අපි මේ කතා කරන මොහොතේ කොළඹ මාලිමාවෙන් PPK උද්ඝෝෂණයක් යනවා. සමහරවිට ඔබ සමහරු නරඹන්නේ දකින්න ඇති. ඊටාත්ම බරපතල විදියට කියන්නේ අමානුෂික විදියට මේ උද්ඝෝෂණයට පහර දීලා මේ වෙනකොට 15 දිනකත් තුවාල ලැබලයි කියන එක තමයි අපිට අහන්න තියෙන ආරංචිය. මම කියන්නේ ගියේ මාධ්‍යවේදීන්ටත් ඒ කියන්නේ මොකක්ද මේ මොහොතේ ප්‍රයොරිටි එක කියලා තීන්දුව කරන්න වෙනවා. එතකොට සමහරලාට දරුවන්ට කන්න නැහැ කියන එකට වඩා සමහරලාට මේ වගේ ඇටැක් එකක් ගැන වෙන්න පුළුවන් ප්‍රමුඛතාව මෙහි වෙන්නේ. කොහොමනත් දෙකක් තියෙනවා. ලංකාවේ මාධ්‍යවල යන්නේ නැත්නම් අඩු ගානේ මේ වගේ දෙයක් දැන් මට මේ ස්ලයිඩ් එකේ මට පේනවා BBC News වල අර කියපු එක වරාවක් කියපු වාර්තාව. ඒ කියන්නේ එක අම්මා කෙනෙකුට කොයි දරුවද ඉස්කෝලේ යවන්න වෙලා තියෙන්නේ කියන වාර්තාව මම හිතන්නේ හුඟක් මිනිස්සු කියන්නේ උපුටා දැක්වුවා, කතා බහ කළා. ඒ වගේ එක් අවස්ථාවක පොඩි වාර්තාවක් යනවා. ඊට පස්සේ ඒක අමතක කරලා අපි ඊළඟ දවසේ තියෙන්නේ මොකක්ද කියන එක මමත් මාධ්‍යවේදියෙක් හැටියට TVCට අවුරුදු 25ක් හිටියා. දැන් තාමත් මගේ මාධ්‍ය කලාවේ මම නිරත වෙලා ඉන්නවා. ඉතින් අර මම හිතන්නේ අපිත් රැල්ල පස්සේ දුවනවා දෝ කියලා. දැන් මේ වගේ අතිශය බරපතල ප්‍රශ්නයක් ගැටලුවක් කොයි විදියටවත් ප්‍රධාන ධාරාවේ හරි එහෙම නැත්නම් ප්‍රධාන ධාරාව කිසියම් ආකාරයකට දැන් මම කියන්නේ ලෝකයෙන් ප්‍රවණතාවක් විදියට ප්‍රධාන ධාරාවේ මාධ්‍ය වෙනුවට ඩිජිටල් මාධ්‍ය කියන එක මතුවෙමින් තියෙනවා. ඒ ඩිජිටල් මාධ්‍ය තුළ හෝ අපි දකින්නේ නැහැ. ඒක මම හිතන්නේ ඇත්තම ගැටලුවක් විතරක් නෙමෙයි හරිම කනගාටුදායක. ඉතින් එදා සොරායක්වත් කතා කරාට පස්සේ මම දිගටම කිව්වේ මගේ channel එකක් මම කරගෙන යන්නේ සංදේශය by සරෝජ් කියලා YouTube නාලිකාවක්. ඒ වගේම මේ නාලිකාවේ සාමාන්‍ය මොකක් හරි ප්‍රෝග්‍රෑම් එකක් කරාම The Leader කියන වෙබ්සයිට් එකෙත් අපි ලියලා දුන්නොත් මට ඒ වාර්තා කරන Leader වෙබ්සයිට් එකත් කොහොම සහයෝගයක් දෙනවා. ඒ වගේ මම කල්පනා කරමින් කියන්නේ පොඩි සැලසුම් කරමින් ඉන්නවා ප්‍රධානම නෙමෙයි සැටලයිට් ටෙලිවිෂන් එකක් පොඩි සතියකට වරක් වගේ පොඩි ප්‍රෝග්‍රෑම් එකක් කරන්න සාකච්ඡා කරමින් මම කියන්නේ ඉතින් මේ වගේ දෙයකට විශේෂයෙන් මගේ නාලිකාව හරහා මට පුළුවන් මේ කතාව අරගෙන යන්න කතා බහ කරන්න වීඩියෝ එකක් විදියට පළවෙනිම දේම ethical journalism කියන්නේ BBC මහජන සේවා මාධ්‍ය නාලිකාවක් කරන විදිහට මට ඉස්සෙල්ලාම අවසර වුණේ මේ දරුවෝ සහ අම්මලා තාත්තලා එක්ක කතා කරන්න කීප දෙනෙක් එක්ක. ඒ කතාව ඒ මිනිස්සු ඒ කතාව කියන්නේ නැත්නම් දරුවෝ කතාව කියන්නේ නැත්නම් අම්මලා තාත්තලා කතාව කියන්නේ නැත්නම් පවර්ෆුල් ඒ වගේ කේස් ස්ටඩි එකක් නැත්නම් ටිකක් අසිරුයි කොයිතරමට අපි මෙහිමයි කියලා කිව්වත් කියන්නේ. ඒ නිසා සමහරලාට අපිට මම දුක විකුණනවා නෙමෙයි නමුත් අපිට ඒ දුක ඇත්තටම ඒ දුක් වේදනාබර කතාවක් හෝ කතා කිහිපයක් හොයාගත්තේ නැත්නම් එහෙම දරුවෝ අපිට කියන්නේ නැත්නම් අම්මලා තාත්තලාගේ අවසර ඇතුව එහෙම නැත්නම් ඒ අම්මලා තාත්තලා අපිට කතාවක් කියන්නේ බොහොමම වේදනාකාරීම කතාවක් මේක මුහුණ දීලා ඉන්න තත්ත්වය ගැන කියවෙන්නේ නැත්නම් අපිට මිනිස්සුන්ගේ මනසට කතා කරන්නත් ඇත්තටම අමාරුයි. මම කියන්නේ මෙතන මම ආයිත් කියන්නේ මේ විකිණීමක් කියන එක නෙමෙයි මම කියන්නේ. නමුත් අපිට ජනතා අවධානය අසන්නන්ගේ නරඹන්නන්ගේ කියවන්නන්ගේ අවධානය ගන්න පුළුවන් විදියට මේකේ අපි හොයාගන්න ඕනේ බරපතලම ගැටලු වලට තාමත්ම දුක්ඛදායක තත්යකට මුහුණ දීලා ඉන්න පවුල් කිහිපයක් දරුවෝ අම්මලා. ඒ දරුවන්ට මට කතා කරන්න පුළුවන් අම්මලාගේ හෝ පාසලේ බලධාරීන්ගේ අවසරය ඇතුව විතරයි. එහෙම නැතුව දරුවන්ට කතා කරන්න මට BBC හිටපු නැත්නම් මේ ethics තියාගෙන මම දරුවන්ගේ ගිහිල්ලා කෙලින්ම මේ කතාවක් අරගෙන වාර්තා කරන්න බෑ. ඒ සියලු ගැටලු අපිට විසඳ ගන්න පුළුවන් නම් ඊළඟට මම චූලට ඇත්තටම කිව්වා මොකද මම මේක රැකියාවක් හැටියට නෙමෙයි කරන්නේ. නමුත් මම මගේ අතින් වියදම් කරලා තමයි මේ සියල්ල කරන්නේ මගේ channel එක කරන්නේ. ඉතින් ඒකට කැමරාමන් කැමරාවලට එඩිටින් වලට ට්‍රාන්ස්පෝර්ට් වලට වියදමක් යනවා. ඒක ගැන මම ඇත්තටම චූලට බජට් එකක් ඉදිරිපත් කළා. මගේ
ඒ බජට් එක තමයි මේ තියෙන්නේ. බොහොම සාධාරණ විදියට දක්වලා තියෙන බජට් එක තමයි සරෝජ් මේකේ තියෙන්නේ. ඔක්කොම වියදම රුපියල් 50000ක් යනවා ඩොකියුමන්ට් එකක් හදාගන්න. ඒකනේ කිව්වේ නේද?
ඔව් ඒක තමයි මම කැමරාමන් දෙන්නෙක් එක්ක ඇවිල්ලා වාහනයකින් ඇවිල්ලා මේකේ මම චූලමට කිව්වා ඔයාගේ දේවල් මට හිම අවශ්‍යතාවයක් නැහැ මොකද මේක මට මගේ මේ මොහොතේ මමත් ස්ථිර රැකියාවක් නැතිව ඉන්න කෙනෙක් විදියට මට මගේ අතින් වියදම් කළා කරගන්න බැරි එක විතරයි මම කියන්නේ මම වෙනුවෙන් මගේ සේවය වෙනුවෙන් මම කිසිම මේ charge එකක් මෙතන අය කරන්නේ නැහැ කිසියම් ආකාරයකට මීට වඩා අඩු වුණොත් මට ඒක අනිත් පැත්තට දෙන්නත් පුළුවන් වියදම නෙමෙයි නම මේ දල වශයෙන් මේක තමයි සාමාන්‍ය දල වශයෙන් යන වියදම. ඉතින් මට ඇවිල්ලා කළුතරට ඇවිල්ලා දවසක් ඕගොල්ලෝ එක ගත කරලා මේ කතා ටික අහගෙන ඒ වගේම එතකොට ටීචර්ස්ටත් එක්කත් කතා කරලා මේක පැය භාගයක විතර වගේ ඩොකියුමන්ටරි එකක් විදිහට හදන්න පුළුවන්. හදලා ඒ වගේම ඊට පස්සේ මම කිව්වේ ඉස්සරහටත් පොඩි ක්ලිප්ස් විදිහට හරිය දාලා ජනතාවට මේක තේරෙන විදිහට කතාව කියන්න පුළුවන්. හැබැයි මම ආයිත් කියන්නේ ඒක අතරින් මම ඇත්තටම හරිම මේ පුතුමයි ප්‍රධාන ධාරාවේ මාධ්‍යවලට හරි ලංකාවේ වෙනත් ආකාරයක මට වඩා හුඟක් ප්‍රොමිනන්ට් අය ඉන්නවනේ ඉහළින් ඉන්න මේ ඩිජිටල් මාධ්‍ය YouTube වල හරි මේ අය මේ කිසිම විදියකට මේ වගේ කතාවක් ගන්නේ නැත්තේ මොකද කියලා. එක විදියකට මේකට මේවා මාකට් වෙන්නේ නැති වෙන්න පුළුවන්. මොකද අවසානයේ අපේ මාධ්‍ය ශාස්ත්‍රය තුල සියල්ල තීන්දුව වෙන්නේ ඒක හරිම කනගාටුදායකයි කියන්නේ මාධ්‍ය ශාස්ත්‍රය විතර නෙවෙයි හැම ශාස්ත්‍රයකම ඉතින් මාධ්‍ය ශාස්ත්‍රයේ සියල්ල තීන්දුව වෙන්නේ අවසානයේ Tamanට කීයක්ද ලැබෙන්නේ කියන එක මත. ඩිජිටල් මාධ්‍යෙත් එහෙමයි. ප්‍රධාන ධාරාවේ මාධ්‍යවලත් එහෙමයි. කොයි විදියකට හරි දැන් ඩොක්ටර් ශාෆිගේ එක ඒ විදියට විකුණපු මිනිස්සු විකිණුවේ අරමුණක් ඇතුව දේශපාලන අරමුණක් ඇතුවනේ. හිට්ස් ගැනීමට සහ දේශපාලන අරමුණක් ඇතිව. ඒකට හිජාස් හිස්බුල්ලාගේ කතාව එහෙම නැත්නම් අපේ ජන කොටසක් අපි මේ වෙලාවේ ඊස්ටර් සන්ඩේ ඇටැක් එකෙන් පස්සේ ජන කොටසක් ටාගට් කරගෙන ඒවා කරෙත් ඒවත් වෙනත් අරමුණු ඇතුවනේ. දැන් මේ වගේ දෙයක් සර්විස් එකක් මේ වගේ දරුවන්ට මේ ප්‍රශ්නයක් තියෙනවා කියලා කීමෙන් සමහරවිට කාටවත් වාසියක් නැලබෙන වෙන්න පුළුවන් එකක්. මේක බොහොම අපි කියන්නේ කනගාටුවෙන් ඒ දේ කියන්නේ. නමුත් අපි කරමු පුළුවන් නම් මම සූදානම් මේ දේ ඉස්සරහට ගෙනියන්න. හැබැයි මට ওই හැම වගේමත් සහයෝගය ඕනේ. මම කියන්නේ සහයෝගය ඕනේ කියන්නේ වීඩියෝ එකක් කරලා නිකන් YouTube එකට දාලා විතරක්වත් හරියන්නේ නැහැ. මේක ගැන සංවාදයක් ප්‍රධාන ධාරාවේ සාමාන්‍ය සමාජයේ සංවාදයක් එන්න ඕනේ, එම්පති එකක් එන්න ඕනේ. මේ දරුවන්ගේ වේදනාව, මේ අම්මලාගේ වේදනාව, මේ ගුරුවරයන්ගේ වේදනාව ඒගොල්ලත් අර ප්‍රින්සිපල් කිව්වා විදියටම ඒගොල්ලත් ඉන්නේ අතිශය අමාරු තැනක. ඒක අපේ සමාජය තුළ කතා බහට ලක් වෙන්න. අපි උත්සාහ කරමු කරන්න.
ඔය සරෝජ බොහොම ස්තුතියි. ඇත්ත අපිට ඕනකම තියෙන්නේ මේක කොහොම හරි ඉස්සරහට ගෙනියන්න මේ ප්‍රශ්නේ මේ ඇඩ්වර්ටයිස් කරොත්නේ. ඒ කියන්නේ හොඳට දැනුම්ගත කරොත් තමයි අපිට ආධාර ලබා ගන්නත් පුළුවන්. දැන් ටර්කි වල ප්‍රශ්නේ බලන්න කොච්චර හොඳට දැනුවත් කරලා රටවල් 100ක් ගිහිල්ලා උදව් කරලා එහෙම කරන්නේ ඒ මිනිස්සු දැනුම ලබා ගත්තාම ෆැක්චුවල්. ඒ කියන්නේ ඇත්ත සිටි ඒ විදිහෙන් දැනගත්තාම මිනිස්සු උදව් කරනවා. ඉතින් හැමෝම උදව් කරන්නේ නැතිව ඒ මොනට පුළුවන් අය පුළුවන් විදිහට උදව් කරනවානේ. ඉතින් මේ ડોකියුමන්ට් එක හදාගෙන මේකේ ඩිරෙක්ට්ලි ඕනනම් ඉස්කෝලේ වලට සහභාගී වෙලා කවුරු හරි උදව් කරන්න ඕන නම් ඒකත් පුළුවන්. අපිට මොකද කලුතර ප්‍රින්සිපල් ඇග්‍රී වුණා ඒ එතිකල් ඇස්පෙක්ට් එක ඔක්කොම හරි ගස්සලා දෙන්නම් කියලා සරෝජ්ගේ මේක කරන්න. ඒ කලුතර ප්‍රින්සිපල් අද මොකක් හරි එකක් හින්දා ටිකක් පරක් වෙලා සහභාගී වෙලා නැහැ තාම. ඒ වුණාට අනිත් ඉස්කෝලත් ඒ වාටායන අනිත් ඉස්කෝලවල තත්ත්වෙත් ඒ කට්ටිය ඒ ප්‍රින්සිපල්ලා සමහරට අවිල්ලා ඔයාලට උදව් කරයි මේ තත්ත්වය කියලා දෙන්න. ඉතින් ඒක නිසා මේක අපි කරගෙන යනවා නම් හොඳයි. ඉතින් මේකේ මේ අපි ලීඩ්ස් හැටියට අපි සල්ලි එකතු කරන්නේ නැහැ කියන එක දන්නවා. දැන් තියෙන තත්ත්වය හැටියට ඒක අපි කරන්නේ නැහැ. හැබැයි ඒ වුණාට ඩිරෙක්ට්ලි සහයෝගීත්වය දක්වන්න පුළුවන් නම් පොඩි කොටසකට හරි මට ඊමේල් එකක් එවන්න. එතකොට අපි ඩිරෙක්ට්ලි හරි ගස්සලා දෙන්නම් මේකේ ෆන්ඩ් එක හරි ගස්ස ගන්න. ඉතින් ඒක නිසා බොහොම ස්තුතියි. ඒක දන්වන්න තමයි මට ඕනකම තියුනේ. ඉතින් කවුරු හරි මේ ගැන කවුරු හරි දන්න කෙනෙක් උදව් කරන්න හරි කැමති නම් මට ඊමේල් එකක් එවන්න. එතකොට අපිට ඒක හරි ගස්සලා දෙන්න පුළුවන් සරෝජ්. හරි බොහොම ස්තුතියි සරෝජ්. ඉතින් අපි මේ
හරි
මොනවද
බොහොම
කියන්න තියෙනවද? වෙන මොනවද කියන්න තියෙනවද?
නෑ දැනට එක්කමනයි අපි ටච් එකේ මොහොමත් සම්බන්ධ වෙන්නම් පුළුවන් හැම වෙලාවකම මේ සාකච්ඡාවට. බොහොම ස්තුතියි චුලා. බොහොම ස්තුතියි හැමෝටම.
හරි. එතකොට අපි දැන් ඊළඟට තව අත උස්සලා තියෙන කවුරු හරි ඉන්න පොඩ්ඩක් බලන්න. නිල්මිනි අත උස්සලා තියෙනවනේ. නිල්මිනි කියන්න. නිල්මිනි.
Yeah, I was just wondering about how you propose to broadcast the documentary, because YouTube to have an effect you need a lot of existing subscribers. Is there any way you can get this out to the media in Sri Lanka or elsewhere?
If it's factual, we should be able to get it forward to various places and see whether they will make any effort. And also, if you can get any grants or something, that may be useful to use as a feature, so that we can get grants. And also, it will naturally allow local people also to try and help, which happens in Sri Lanka. So only problem is we need to tell exactly what the problem is. Now, this kind of problem where the children are drinking water instead of eating and kind of imitating that they are eating when they are not. So this kind of thing is never shown, isn't it? But very sad. But
Yeah.
that is why we need to do something like this. So
Good.
I'm glad that Saroj has come forward to help us with this. So we will try to take this forward. Yeah.
I mean, that documentary is going to be really valuable, but the question is, how do you get it out to the media? Because YouTube itself is only effective if there are existing subscribers to a particular channel. So are there contacts that you have within the Sri Lanka?
We can use our own contacts. In our own group, we have about nearly 200 people who can be informed. But I can try to get it through to media as well. We'll see how it goes. The media is, at the moment in Sri Lanka itself, they're worried as well. So There's some filtering mechanism. I don't know how, but we will understand. We will ask from people how to do it. Yeah, if we have the documentary, then we may be able to take it forward as well. Yeah, Udita, you have also raised hands. Udita. Udita, yes.
Yeah, sorry, I have had contacts with one of my previous schools, and they also had started a program where they provide lunches for 200 students, and they were looking at funds to maintain this. Just wanted to mention that.
Yeah. I mean, even I think Nilmini is also aware that they raise funds and follow their funding school meals. Yeah, there are people who are funding school meals at the moment, so we are very grateful for them. But if we have more data, then we, or at least people talk about the issues, then we should be able to get more support at a local level, rather than even the government may get interested with time. But I think at least getting the local people is important. Saroj, you have also raised your hand. Saroj?
Yeah, but because in response to Nilmini's question, Nilmini, I can collaborate with a couple of more YouTube administrators, namely Life Traveler, and there is a YouTube channel run by the Leader website as well. So couple of others usually they support, and plus News via Assams, I can request some support in terms of marketing. But at the same time, you said YouTube may not be the most appropriate channel. Let me sound out to Sirasa. I do have contacts within the media, mainstream media organizations, but by all means, if one of the mainstream media organizations are happy to carry the story forward, I don't mind. I don't mind. I would be very happy. Let me sound out.
Yeah. I
and
mean,
will
so if we
come.
have the documentary, we may be able to think about the next steps. That's my thinking.
Yeah.
And also mention exactly the purpose of doing it as well. So we are not trying to influence or fight with governments. We are trying to help the students. That's the whole
That's right.
purpose of this. Yeah.
Also, if it's done in English, it'll reach a wider audience elsewhere as well. If it's possible for you to conduct it in English with maybe subtitles in Sinhalese and Tamil.
Yeah, I think
That
he may be able to do it appropriately, because some of the parents may not answer in English, no. So you will have
exactly. Yeah.
you have to
Yeah,
title. So you make it hybrid,
Subtitles.
and where necessary, put the other subtitles in Sinhala, Tamil, or English, whatever. That way, it will be a hybrid communication. So hopefully, it will be understood by many people. Isn't it? Yeah. Okay. Thank you. I'll go forward. We are talking about taxes, which has also a lot of relevance to this kind of problem. So let's go forward. So we were talking about getting some opinions about taxes of Sri Lanka, and I'll give a little bit more details. Now, here we have tax. Tax is individual income, consumption tax, value-added tax, business tax, etc. Ultimately comes on the consumer, basically. So the direct tax means direct tax is a form of tax paid directly to the government. Direct tax is usually taken directly from your earnings. So that's the income tax that we pay who get a salary or whatever. Then you have indirect taxes. Now, Sri Lanka has lots of indirect taxes paid on a consumer goods and then paid to the government later. So I can even think, remember that when they started taxing the waves, for example, all the telephones, media waves, everything. So indirect tax is imposed on the goods or services you purchased. So this was the main form of income in Sri Lanka, but I'll have a slide to talk about that. And in free markets, usually the taxation depends on supply and demand. So one of these people pay taxes to this thing. So let's see. So the tax liability ultimately falls on the consumers in the form of higher product prices. But taxation is the primary source of revenue for the government. Since taxes control the final price of a commodity, they indirectly control supply and demand. Then the consumer often pays a higher price and the seller does not increase profits because the government intervenes in the form of increased taxes. So this is what happens. Now, if you look at Sri Lanka, this is actually data from 2019, I think. If you look at the composition of government revenue, tax revenue is nearly 89%. And of that, can you see these income taxes? That's the direct taxes that's coming from 16%. The rest is mostly indirect taxes. And that's 89% of the income. And then the government has some income from just 10% from fees and charges, then profits from dividends and income and so on. So it's very little. So taxes is the main form of income for the government in Sri Lanka. That's the one that they have to use to pay salaries and so on. This is a graph about the Sri Lanka personal income tax rate, which was like 24% on average, but it has dropped to 15 and 16 in 2016, then gone back on to the 24, and then come down to 18 in 2022. So this was partly considered the creation of the economic crisis, leading to bankruptcy at one point. So today, now here are the taxes. Now this is the one that was imposed. It's increasing with time, and the current at this, the second 3 months in 2023 is going to be something like that. So if you earn 125,000, that is first, this is at 6%. Then next 125,000, 12%. Then the next 18%, 24%, and so on. So the people protested, saying this is a huge increase in income tax. And then some actually understood the problem, that saying why the government needs so much tax, because there's a lot of corruption in the government. So there are two kind of people who understands the problem and then who start protesting. I think let's take a discussion. Udita has raised the hand. Udita, yeah.
Shula, can you go back to your previous slide?
Yeah, you can do. Sorry. This one, yeah.
So this 24% income tax rate,
yeah,
is for.
I don't have the full detail on this.
Is taxed at this rate? What's the salary cap? Where
at that time, I remember the government people, we had no income tax on our salaries, but from the other incomes that you had to pay a tax of about 25 to 35%. So I think that is what is being averaged into the income here and said 24% personal income tax rate. So
so it is not based on salary. It is from other goods and various things.
Well, that is our because the government officers never had to pay any tax in any of these, as far as I know, because there was no taxing situation.
What about the private sector salaries? They also didn't pay any tax on their salary?
I don't think so. I am not sure. I don't think so.
So from a salary point of view, was Sri Lanka a tax-free nation?
Government. But the others, when you earned, then you had something called a turnover tax, which I remember. Maybe others can say that, maybe Ranjan might know. If you had earned some money, say, if I was there, I did a private case, then there's a turnover tax of 12%, which you have to pay anyway. And then on top of this, your salary, and then you add that onto that. And then the tax government will say you have to pay so much. But that is also not accurately calculated. You just don't know how they calculate it. And some people get high amounts, some people get low amounts. It's not really dependent on really the income. So you can see a little bit of kind of a fluidity.
I'm just trying to understand this concept, because in UK, it is straightforward. If you earn over, we'll say 50,000, your tax rate goes up 40%. If you earn 20,000 or more, I think, I'm not sure of the exact amount, you pay 20% of your income to the government. So are you saying that there's no salary based fixed
There was
tax
no
rate in Sri
salary-based
Lanka?
income tax, as far as I know, because I was working in the university and getting a government salary. And in my salary, there was no calculation of income tax. So nobody else I knew in the
So
university had.
this income tax which the government is trying to impose, is it completely new to Sri Lanka? That's maybe why people are protesting.
Yeah, that may be by it's also on the other hand, if you reflect it back, the salaries are not linked to the inflation, and also the salaries are probably relatively low. So it may be that indirect taxes are actually taxed you so much already anyway. Government was probably not interested in this.
But even in UK you get VAT, isn't it? That is the
Yeah,
indirect tax
VAT was
anyway.
there. VAT is like 20%. That was there, but nobody knew about it because nobody was talking about it. If you bought something, you just paid it and came. But as far as I know, that then you had various import tax from this is that was subject to again corruption. You have an import tax that's put on various foods like fried infant milk. So I believe that if you kind of bought a packet of milk, say if it's 200 rupees, and you may be paying another 200 rupees as tax, and nobody was aware, so you buy one for 400 rupees. So that is on the import tax that they have put before anything was imported. So those things also become indirect taxes that goes to the customer. So this is why there was a problem. So I don't know whether there's anybody else who can highlight us. I don't know. Ranjan, do you know much about the taxes beforehand?
As to the best of my knowledge, when I was serving in the army, I don't think my salary was taxed. Never tax-free. The pension to date is tax-free. I know some people not in the army, but working in the bank, for instance, whose pension is substantial. Pension is substantial, tax-free. They don't have an income tax file even. I know this personally. Right?
Yeah.
I mean, there are certain categories of high income earners in the private sector as well as in the government sector whose salaries are pretty high, and I don't see any reason why they should not be paying tax on their
I see a reason.
salary. I know at a base level, teachers or the administrators or low level people may not need to pay tax, but there are people who are being paid very high amounts, more than a million sometimes from Sri Lankan point of view. And surely they should be paying tax. I mean, we pay 40% tax on our salaries.
Can I reply to Udita? In this, before we could find the answer, shall we look at some of the practices relating to taxing in, for example, the United States of America? What my knowledge is that, what I know is that some of the high income earners, okay, they don't pay tax, and there is a reason for it. They don't pay tax. You can correct me if I'm wrong, please do. But the rationale behind them not being taxed is they expect the capital, that money, to be invested to create wealth. That is why. You see, so it's an encouragement for them, for the government, in the long term, of the interests of the government. That may be the reason why there is so much of new ideas coming out of America, but nothing is coming out of Sri Lanka. No? Absolutely, we are an intellectually barren country. Even the intellectuals we produce, they have run away from Sri Lanka because the situation is so very bad in Sri Lanka, right? So Udita, when you put it so simply, well, it is not as simple as that. Sri Lanka also needs to create wealth. So to create wealth, you need incentives. You see, so I think there is something in the American rationale in allowing the filthy rich to keep their wealth without being taxed. And I think they have honored that pledge. You see, unlike in Sri Lanka, see, they have been creating wealth. They have been during my lifetime. Take what Bill Gates has done, Steve Jobs has done. You see, they have changed the world. They have changed the world. Just think of, some of us when we were young, when I passed out from the university, there were no computers. You see, when I went through my university education without any computers. Look at how lucky the children are today. You see, who created that wealth? You see, in Sri Lanka, anybody? No. Thank you.
Yeah, I think it's very good discussion on this. I've got some slides to explain it a little bit more, Udita. So shall we go forward a little bit? I'll allow a discussion again. So this is the current income tax rates on the incomes that's been imposed for the last 4 months or so. And I talked about the protest as well as at the same time, there is also understanding among people why do we have to, pay so much tax to the government. So although this is not a very high figure compared to the other countries. Now, benefits of higher government spending. So we have a high spending government, okay. So generally, if you have high government spending, it enables more public health care, an important factor in the quality of life. Good health care will also help improve life expectancy and labor productivity. Then more spending on education, another important factor in the quality of life. Increased education spending can contribute to higher labor productivity and faster economic development. Provision of good public goods such as national defense, flood defenses, protection of the government, environment, welfare benefits, providing minimum level of income, helping to reduce absolute and relative poverty. Now, in Sri Lanka, has the government been spending all this money in any of these? Healthcare, we know, has gone down. Education, at one government, they reduced the education spending to 1% of the GDP for the whole of Sri Lanka, all the schools and the universities. So can you imagine, people protested and the staff went on strike for 3 months to try and record? It did not happen. So the governments have spent a lot of money, but not for any of the following. But on the other hand, potential problems of government spending. Now, these are things that we should think of. Spending on military defense may not lead to an increase in economic welfare, but may be a reflection of civil unrest. Now, this is quite a true case in Sri Lanka. We have spent a lot of money on defense, police, etc. Then government spending may be prone to corruption. That's true for us. Government spending may be inefficient due to lack of profit motive and incentives to be efficient. Then crowding out of the private sector. Now that is also an important word which I say. Higher government spending can crowd out private sector spending and investment. So what is crowd out means? Now, when governments borrow, which our government's been doing, they compete with everybody else in the economy who wants to borrow the limited amount of savings available. As a result of this competition, the real interest rate increases and private investment decreases. This phenomenon is called crowding out. So obviously, Sri Lanka is not having any investors at the moment. One of the reasons is probably this. Then higher taxes may reduce incentives to work. Higher government spending needs higher tax revenue or higher government borrowing. Higher taxes may create disincentive to work. So these are the issues that are surrounding, and some of these things that I mentioned are directly applicable to us. Now, tax burden as a percentage of GDP is how you calculate the tax burden. If you look at UK, this was done, is now here is 33%. Now, Mexico says 16%. France is the highest tax burden for population, 46%. Now, let's take Sri Lanka. The tax GDP ratio for Sri Lanka is 7.7%. And then look, other countries that we talk about mostly in Sri Lanka. Iran, this is 8.1%. Russia, this is 10.8%. China, this is 12.6%. Now, USA, we talked about 20%. Then we have, this is wrong. So the UK is 39%. Denmark, 46.3%. Now,
Judy, can you clarify what is meant by tax burden? Is it to the individual or how?
it's the tax revenue as a percentage of the GDP. Tax revenue as a percentage of the GDP. That is what is being calculated as the tax burden. Is there anybody who can explain that, who is more economically sound? I think these ratios were quite important, and tax burden has got definitions which I did not put over here. But this is so if you, GDP is the productivity, you know that, isn't it? So the amount of percentage of that productivity that government takes back is probably as the tax burden. That's what it means. So if you look at this tax burden, these are the numbers. Now, if you see in which countries you have more oligarchs. Now, oligarchs, now that's another definition we need. Oligarch, who is an oligarch? Oligarch is a very rich business leader with a great deal of political influence, particularly with reference to individuals who benefited from privatization of state-run industries after the collapse of the Soviet Union. So you have oligarchs as well. And oligarchs seems to operate more in these areas and not in higher tax areas as well. So that is another feature that you might have to say. And Sri Lanka, our tax GDP ratio is 7.7%, which is the lowest or maybe the lowest in the world. So now let's take it forward. And I think Sanjeeva, who should be here, is not here today. Now let's I'll give you a little bit more information about tax competitiveness. Now, tax competitiveness index in 2022, Estonia has the world's best tax system. Now, it's good to look at what is the best tax system in the world. For the 9th year in a row, Estonia has the best tax code in the OECD, according to the freshly published Tax Competitive Index 2022. Estonia's transparent and simple tax system attracts investments with no corporate income tax, no capital tax, no property transfer taxes. Now, let's look at that and see a little bit. Now, I put this OECD. OECD means the Organization for Economic Cooperation and Development. It is an association of 38 nations in Europe, Americas, and Pacific. And it helps the member countries to formulate economic and social policies. And members and key partners of these countries represent 80% of the world trade. So that is the relevance of OECD. So they think Estonia is the best. Now, Estonia is a small country here. Here's the UK over here. That's the Europe. And then you can see Estonia is a small country. A simple tax system means less hassle. Low marginal tax rates create a competitive tax code, supports economic growth. Then the World Bank found that countries with simpler, more efficient tax systems had higher rates of economic growth than those with more complicated tax systems. And in Sri Lanka, the tax system is extremely complicated. Now, Estonia, as I told you earlier, it has no corporate income tax on reinvested and retained profits. This is the same as that Ranjan mentioned just about USA. and a 14 to 20% corporate income tax rate on distributed profits. So if the profits are reused in the country, you don't have to pay any corporate tax. This means that Estonia's corporate income tax system allows companies to reinvest their profits tax-free. Then it has a flat 20% tax on individual income, flat rate on individual income. The tax is not applied in the case of distributed dividends that have already been taxed with a corporate income tax. Then its property tax applies only to the value of land rather than to the value of the real property or capital. Then the other key feature is it has a territorial tax system that exempt 100% of foreign profits earned by domestic corporations from domestic taxation with few restrictions. So look, very simple tax system in Estonia. Now, then look at the politics of Estonia as well. It became independent in 6th September 1991 from the Soviet Union. Politics takes place in a framework of a parliamentary representative democratic republic. That's like ours. But the Prime Minister of Estonia is the head of government and of a multi-party system. Okay. Legislative power is vested in the Estonian parliament. Then 101 parliamentary members elected by proportional representative system, which we discussed, and only for a 4-year term. Now we have, in comparison, about 8,000 with all the districts with elected politicians. Then executive power is exercised by the government, which is led by the Prime Minister. The judiciary is independent of the executive and legislature. Estonia is a member of the United Nations and the European Union and NATO. So they have partnerships there as well. Now, if you take Estonia's composition, say about 70% are Estonian, others are other racial groups are there. In Sri Lanka, about 74% are Sinhalese and the others are there. So very similar kind of composition. Then Estonia's population is only 1.3 million. But their income is $41,000 per capita. So the religious affiliations bit similar to ours. Again, unaffiliated Christians more than 50% there. Now Sri Lanka's population is 22.1 million, but our GDP is only $4,000. See the differences. Again, religious affiliations again bit similar. Like there's a majority with Buddhists and the others as well. So see the Lanka's GDP, which was 4,000, has now even dropped in 2022 to like 3,200. So we have not done very well at all because despite our tax system. Anything to discuss from there? So any questions or any comments until now? Anybody has to say anything? Okay, now I will bring out the Sri Lanka situation in the way I understand it. So I'm not an expert, but you can add and talk about this. Just a couple of slides. Okay. So I told you about the direct and indirect taxes of Sri Lanka has 89%. Other incomes 11% for the Sri Lankan government money. And the government will spend for public services and investments. That's what they should be doing. Right. So these are our incomes. In addition to that, government is getting more money from loans and loans and loans. Then they are also printing money for and then use it as government money. Then you also sell assets, and that's not really transparent as to how much they've got from that, and that also contribute to government money. Then from this money, we have debt repayment. And then we have white elephants, lots of white elephants around with big projects that we've done, but no incomes from those. And there are also debt as well. Then there's what is called, I put a name called political looting, because these are all the kind of commissions, etc., that locally as well as foreign and so on. So the politicians collect indirectly, covertly, 10%, 20%, 50%, and so on. So they like collect their incomes separately. And the burden is actually that of the public. Then the politicians also have perks. And then this is somebody listed some time ago, the vehicles, the number of staff, the free rent and free accommodation, free whatever, free petrol, etc. So you can have lots and lots of perks that the politicians are getting. Then political tamashas are also there. For example, like our celebrations, various celebrations at huge costs. So all that is happening. And then this slide I showed some time ago, which I extracted from a paper, how much the politicians are spending. For example, now for the president, it has increased from last year to 3.8 billion. And he's got 70 million for holidays and all that, and 86 million for travel expenses. So that's the kind of spending we are having. Nothing of that has reduced. So you can understand why people are protesting. Then who will pay for all this? The consumer. That's us. Not only us, our children have to pay for it. Our grandchildren have to pay for it. And also the fourth generation who are unborn, nothing they know about this country, they will have to pay for it as well if they're born in this country. So that's the situation we have at the moment. So this is an article that I've extracted from The Morning on 20th February. This is done by Marianne David. Lack of competence in entire financial decision system making is one of the problems in Sri Lanka. And he highlights these. Sri Lanka's crisis due to series of intentional and tragic policy mistakes. Very significant corruption and vested interest drive decision making. So government lacks capability to design our own economic recovery plans, which Ranjan also highlighted. Then Sri Lanka relies too heavily on IMF to tell us what the solutions are without actually trying to find our own solutions, which is obvious. Then treat domestic debt restructuring early so treatment can be mild. Chinese assurance not critical for IMF agreement. And then now a third crisis is developing where veering off democratic path is the third crisis that is happening at the moment with the local government elections being postponed. So these are the problems we have. So our focus should not only be about increasing income, but reducing wastage, as we thought, is a main thing that the government should be focusing and to take it forward. Anything from here? Anything up to now? Your comments, any suggestions? No questions at the moment. So the focus that I need your attention, if you can write to me or send some documents or whatever is good. Udayant, yes. Is Udita, yes, Udita? Udita, you raised the hand.
Hi, yeah, thank you. So if you go back to our political system over the last 20 years,
yeah,
the politicians, the head of the country, had to bribe their MPs to support whatever the new law or which needs to be passed through the parliament. They needed the support of their MPs, and they bribed them. They bribed them by giving ministerships, deputy ministerships, right? And such a small country has got about close to 100 ministers and deputy ministers, right? That is the way they bribe them, so that, and when you are given a minister or deputy ministership, you are given cars, you are given petrol, you are given so many other benefits which runs to millions of rupees per person, right? And once it is given, we'll say it was given in 1990s, that pattern continued up to now, right? So these people are showered with so many benefits, so that the head of the country will get their vote. Whatever they propose, they will lift their hand, because they're showered with so many benefits, and that has cumulated. That cumulated effect is a burden, huge burden on the country. I'm not sure whether this is right, but those who others might be able to correct them. I was told that 50% of the police is for security of the politicians. Uh, is that right? Does anyone know about that? What the absolute wastage of public money is that? Why do they want protection? Certainly, handful of few people may need protection. Why do ordinary MPs need so much protection? So these are the things which have been on a cumulative basis now is the huge burden on the country, and no government, no president or the head of the country is saying that they should be completely got rid of. They say they vote for their benefits. They say what vehicle they want. There should be an independent body to say what benefits the MPs or ministers should get. But what's happening is they vote for their benefits, right? They get luxury cars. Why do they need luxury cars? Spending millions and billions of rupees. Yes, you could argue that they need a car, but they need a car which should be a basic robust car, not a luxury car, right? They have got so many staff, and all these staff are family members, so it becomes a family business. The whole family and the extended family depends on this minister or deputy minister, right? When it comes to the election, because the whole extended family, not only the person, the extended family and the henchmen, they are so dependent on him, they will do whatever underhand thing, corrupt thing to buy votes. And this becomes a vicious cycle. I don't know what others think about this, but it is something that someone in the head of the country should. I was so pleased to hear recently Ranil Wickremesinghe had told his MPs they should be traveling in economy class. So that sort of thing should come from the top of the leadership if they want to curtail government expenses. For example, if the president of the country travels in a very basic car, the rest, this is what I think our Prime Minister did. Rest of the government, the politicians will have to toe that line. Simple as that. And with that act alone, you will be saving billions of rupees. Sorry, I'll stop for the moment.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Udita, for that. But also these statements of politicians don't actually tell the truth. I mean, if you want to reduce the expenses, they just can curtail the allowance that is allowed for the politicians. So they don't do that. Instead, do a public statement saying, increase, don't go by business class.
No, their benefits should be dictated by an independent body, not by themselves. Simple as that.
So at the moment, it's done by themselves, isn't it? So
Yeah.
basically,
They vote for their cars. They vote for their support staff. They vote for their allowance. They vote for their attendance pay.
and the
Everything is
and the
voted
pension
by
as
them.
well, and the
Yeah.
pension.
So you know.
Yeah, Ranjan, yes, Ranjan.
Chula, I think I saw Nilmini's hand before mine. So shall we listen to her first?
Yeah, yes, Nilmini, yes, you can go for. It
Oh,
appeared the other way for me. Yeah, anyway, it's okay.
Thank you, Ranjan. That's very kind. I was just thinking that, I mean, when you were describing the whole system in Sri Lanka, Jula, I was just thinking, gosh, what a mess. I mean, it's not going to be easy to resolve overnight, I imagine. But just looking at it from a bird's eye viewpoint, I'm just thinking that if there's some way an organization like PwC could be brought in to look at the overall picture and design a system, but then there's got to be an appetite on the part of the Sri Lankan government to bring people, experts like that in from elsewhere and find solutions. But obviously finding where the wastage is, designing a simple tax system, something that'll work.
Sorry. What is PwC? So if you
The PricewaterhouseCoopers is a huge accountants firm, international accountants, but I mean they have experts that have advised governments, I believe. So I mean, if people like that could be brought in to advise the Sri Lankan government how to sort out their internal finances, and also design a system of taxation that can work in that context, the economic and cultural context in Sri Lanka, because what might work somewhere else, whether it's in the UK or Canada or Estonia, might not necessarily work in Sri Lanka, but it's got to be workable. But in the context that we've got of corruption and bribery and all of that behind it, what Ranjan was saying at the beginning about confidence, public confidence, but something that struck me also when you're describing the system, Julia, was that there's no mention of a personal allowance in terms of income tax. Like in the UK, we've got a personal allowance. So the most people who earn least, they don't have to pay any tax on that first tranche of their income. So there's some way that the most, the people who are most poor don't have to pay tax until they earn above a certain amount, and then it's banded. But the banding in Sri Lanka sounds hugely complicated. As you were saying, when it's that complicated, it's unworkable as well. Whereas if you've got kind of 2 or 3 rates of taxation, but there's also no mention of capital gains tax, on sale of a property, for example, or inheritance tax, or any of those taxes that we take for granted in the UK, and people just have to pay because there's no other way of maintaining government services, public services, apart from by borrowing, it looks like, in Sri Lanka. But then that's getting yourself more and more and more into debt. It's crazy. So this is what I was thinking of. Some organization could be brought in to advise the government, but then they've got to be prepared to let go of all their fringe benefits and make sure that it's imposed not only in the private sector, but also in the public sector. There's no reason why the public sector should not be paying taxes as well. Death and income tax are things that apply to all of us.
Yeah, true. Ranjan, yes, Ranjan. I mean, it's so difficult, as you say, in Sri Lanka about the taxing system, and the personal allowance is probably will have to come in at some stage, but this was introduced only like few months ago, so it will come. But the other thing is people who are owning for themselves don't file any tax returns anyway, so So there, at the moment, it's the people who are with fixed salaries who are really hit hard, and the others who are freely earning don't submit any tax returns. Say, for example,
The
laborers
self-employed.
and so manual workers and so on. They're probably earning more than the others as well. So anyway, it's a very complex situation at the moment. Yes, Ranjan.
This is an addendum to what Udita said. In 1977, when JR was the president, he went on an official visit to India. I remember this very clearly. The Indian government sent him a Lincoln. Indian government gave him an official car, a Lincoln. Whereas the Prime Minister of India, Indira Gandhi, traveled in a Hindustan ambassador. Hindustan ambassador.
Yeah.
I remember this because it was so poignant. One. Two, it is worthwhile looking into the facilities that are being given to parliamentarians of Sweden. You see, hardly anything. You see, they don't get a car. There is only one official car for the whole parliament, one or two. In fact, I have the details. Unfortunately, I didn't come prepared. Otherwise, I would have given more details about it. They don't have a fraction of what we have given our parliamentarians, because the concept is different. So they come to serve the people. It is not a job for them, much less a business, contra Sri Lanka. I remember in the early days of our election, 1948 onwards, parliamentarians, anyone who wanted to contest an election, they brought money from home. They spent their money, right? And so I can still remember one example of a minister, D.S. Gunasekara, MP for Udugama. His father saying, you know, they all came, spent their money, actually the money that they had inherited from their parents, and they lost all that money. This father used to say, I have heard him say this, MP for Udugama, D.S. Gunasekara, he was a minister in the Mrs. Bandaranaike's government. This is what his father used to say. Ane mage puta, mama sinhalen hamba karapuwa, mage puta Ingreshiyen nati kara. What he says for the benefit as English translation, I owe my son wasted in English what I earned in Sinhalese. That is what he said. So then at that time, the cry was, you see, this Dhanapati Pandi and the Pidita Pandi and the rich people, the rich class did not know the hardships, the suffering of the poor, and they created the poor man's era. The poor man's era is the beginning of corruption, because today MPs come to parliament not to serve the people, but to serve themselves. Who can deny that? Thank you.
Thank you, Ranjan. I think we've nearly taken quite a lot of time, about 1.5 hours now. I actually had a lot of questions, but I don't know whether I have time to discuss all this. I think I'll take it at a later date, and then we got a lot of information today from you all, and then I will try to incorporate it into a document and see how far we can get. And I must actually thank this is the one that triggered me. This article, Sri Lanka's Tax Conundrum. It was published about 4 months ago by Sanjeeva Jayavira. So Sanjeeva actually contributes to our discussions, and he's not here today, but then it's good if he's also there. So I'll take this up again at a future date. And he summarized the way forward in three things in his article. Increased revenue. It is only by taxes that fall on the rich that the government would be able to rake in tax revenues from those who evade and avoid income taxes. Such a system would be more equitable and acceptable to people. So there's a tax evasion issue at the moment. Then inadequate revenue. Sri Lanka has one of the lowest, if not the lowest, as we showed, government revenue to GDP ratio of only 8% of GDP. This has to be increased to about 12% of GDP and increase further in the next few years. So this is another thing that is necessary for the government, but as you say, you have to have a trustworthy government. Then the expenditure, which we talked about, the process of fiscal consolidation is two-pronged. It must contain excessive, wasteful, and avoidable government expenditure while increasing government revenue. There is little evidence of the government curtailing public expenditure. So Sanjeeva seems to understand more about what we talked about, and I will forward this and see whether we can get him to talk and explain a few things on what we discussed, and then we will take it forward from there. So thank you all. And essential government services is something that I want to find out. What should be government service, which also we don't have any time at the moment. So any comments before we shut down for today? But we will take this up again. Any comments?
Chuda, I don't know whether anyone knows about the number of percentage of police providing military, ministerial security. Is someone said it's 50%? I mean, this is an absolute crime if that is the case. Any idea? Anyone know about this?
I am not sure, but I know quite a lot of police everywhere, and they were just there doing nothing very much. I mean, last time when I went, there were roadblocks everywhere, and then they were not actually doing any roadblocks or any inspections. Every site had about 15 policemen. And then I asked from someone what was going on, and he said, there is a protest in Colombo today, and they are preventing all the buses who are going to the protest or something like that. So that was their job at that time. So I think there's so much being used for the so-called defense, and it's mainly to control the public or the protests and so on. I don't know the number of people who the politicians have at the moment. Any other comments at all?
I just think you need to bring in experts, people who really understand finances and taxation to advise the Sri Lankan government. But then the question is, will they take advice and implement them?
Now, the external experts, this is a very popular area for Sri Lanka, and I recently saw a report. The Colombo hospital, the IT system has broken down. Now, there are local people who can attend to it, but they don't want local people. They want the foreign people to come and fix it at 100 times more expense than what the cost will be in Sri Lanka. So the whole idea of this foreign bringing in involves some kind of commissioning and corruption for the politicians who are approving it. So this is another problem that is there. We do need advice from experts, but at the same time, it has to be independent and given rather than invited in. You see what I mean? So there is an issue like that in Ilmani.
No, it's okay.
I think we are okay. I think we had a very good discussion today, and thank you everybody for joining. And next week, Saturday, 8 to 10 p.m., there'll be the training session that's conducted by Soraya Dean for school teachers and principals. And anybody can join. I'll send the link shortly. And the Sunday, at the moment, we don't have any titles as such, but it's too early to take up this one. But I'll see whether Sanjeeva can highlight things to us. Yeah. And thank you all. Anything else? Hari, we'll thank you. So it was about the documentary also. I'll update shortly how far we have got. Yeah, thanks very much. Thank you. Okay.
Bye.
Good. Bye.
Thank you.